What's up, y'all? Welcome to my channel, Words of Wawa. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing good. I'm late. Spooky season is officially over. You had a great Halloween. Hope you were able to celebrate and do the things that you want to do with your friends, your family, whoever. I missed spooky season, but I still wanted to do this video, tell you how I spent my Halloween night and what I did. I actually did a double feature of two movies. Decided to watch two Blaxploitation horror movies, Abby and JD's Revenge. And these are two possession movies, two black horror possession movies. Interesting movies, a lot going on. I'm gonna try to make this as spoiler free as possible. Even though these movies are old, I don't want to ruin them just in case anybody decides to go out and watch them. Interestingly, I have the same feelings about these movies as I did about A-Bar, the first Black Superman, and The Thing with Two Heads. A lot of things that I saw in those movies, I saw in these movies. First thing I want to do is give a quick synopsis of each of these movies, just so you can kind of understand the plot and what's going on. And then I will give my thoughts on both of these movies. And I'd seen JD's Revenge before. This is my first time watching Abby. This isn't going to be like a true review. This is going to be more, like I said, my thoughts and like kind of a reaction, but not a reaction. I'm just going to give really my overall thoughts on these two movies and kind of combine some of the ideas of what was going on. First, I'll talk about JD's Revenge. It stars Glenn Turman, Louis Gossett, Joan Pringle, and the basic story is there's this guy who is a pimp in the 1940s. He ends up getting unalived by one person. This person also unalived his sister. There was like in the synopsis, it says that he was framed for unaliving his sister, but that's not really what happened. But anyways, fast forward to the 1970s. This guy, Ike, which is interesting that his name was Ike, he ends up getting hypnotized and then JD possesses him. And it goes basically from Ike turning into JD and what JD does. And there's a lot going on in this. JD's Revenge came out in 1976. It was directed by Arthur Marks. I think he may have written it as well. And I think JD's Revenge was an interesting spin on the possession movie. It kind of took it in a direction that a lot of people wouldn't maybe have taken it in, just from the movies I've seen. And it's also interesting that the possessions with Ike's character being hypnotized. That's just kind of like a brief synopsis of JD's Revenge. Abby came out in 1974, basically a year after The Exorcist came out. Stars Carol Speed, Terry Turner, I believe his name is, and the William Marshall, aka Blackula. This movie is about a theological doctor who's kind of like an anthropologist as well, who goes over to Africa, Nigeria. He has been studying Eshu, one of the Orishas. He basically frees this thing. He frees this god of chaos, sexuality. Eshu escapes, doesn't possess the doctor, comes to America and possesses Abby. Abby becomes this abusive, sexually aggressive trickster deviant. And she gets into some shenanigans, like some real shenanigans throughout this movie. And they have to figure out what to do with her. They think that there's nothing wrong with her. They have to figure out what's going on. Abby was directed by William Girdler. I think that's how his name is pronounced. And this is one that I really have mixed feelings about both of these movies. But I think they were okay, decent movies. Not scary at all, but they were decent movies. One thing I will say is for the budgets, they actually were able to pull off a lot. I didn't see the budget for JD's Revenge. I would believe it's probably like a little bit higher than this. Maybe somewhere close to maybe like $500,000 to $1,000,000, possibly. For what they had, they were able to do some really cool stuff. Like JD's Revenge had some really cool reflection. Ike's character would be looking at himself in the mirror and he would see JD. And I thought that was really cool. So I do think that they did some cool stuff with what they had. I can't say that The Boondocks was inspired by these two movies, but I feel like Stinkmeaner Strikes Back was influenced by Abby and JD's Revenge. Because the stronger the possession got for these two characters in these two respective movies, the more niggardly they got. Like it was it was crazy. Like they were having their moments as the possessions continue to get stronger, especially in JD's Revenge. I think Abby too, Even the voice that they used for Abby's possession was like a deeper version of Stink Meter's voice. It was funny in its moments, and it was kind of crazy too. If you watch JD's Revenge for this particular scene, it is like something right out of the boondock. Even the facial expressions that Glenn Turman is making is like a Boondocks character. And Abby, even the way that the exorcism was handled was very much like what Uncle Ruckus did in the Boondocks. Not like extremely like it, not like synced or like same thing, but it was similar. It's also interesting the roles that religion plays in these two movies, Abby especially, but even in JD's Revenge, because in JD's Revenge, Louis Gossett's character plays basically a slick preacher, a preacher who has overplayed his character to the point where he thinks he's like a true preacher, even though he's really not. He's like a slick hustler. In Abby, they use religion like very strongly. Like religion is the crutch. Religion is the thing that is going to save people. I think both of these are almost like a commentary on the way in which Black people see spirituality. In Abby, the entity wasn't like a true demon. It was a different religion's entity, which I think is interesting because now Orishas are seen like as spirits that people look at and people try to understand. In Abby, the Orisha or the minor Orisha was the evil entity that, and they even make the character very like pagan like because this is a god of sexuality, chaos, and it's a trickster god that comes into and possesses Abby. I also think it's interesting the role that sex plays in these two movies. In JD's Revenge, JD is a pimp. There are two very vivid sex scenes. One is basically almost like a in JD's Revenge, and the other is just like a very vivid and harsh sex scene. And then in Abby, it's interesting that just kind of like the freeness and the overly sexualized behavior that comes out of Abby as her possession becomes strengthened. And I think that is compounded by the fact that one, Abby's husband is a pastor and Abby is very involved in the church group. She is a marriage counselor, and there's a scene where basically she's counseling someone and she tries to come on to that person because her possession is getting stronger. There's even a scene where she tries to come on to her father-in-law. Just like with the thing with two heads, I said it once, I'll say it again. I don't think there's anything wrong with white directors directing Black themed movies, but I think some of the choices that they make are very interesting. In both of these movies, no matter who the person were, they talked very like jive and like rhythmic and like it was very Black. And also understand that that's the 70s and that's how a lot of Black people talk. They were like, hey brother, you know, this and that and blase blase. And it was like very cool to talk like that. Cause it was like even like doctors and police officers and people of that would be considered of a higher standing had that jive, that like ebonics, that very Black talk. In Jay's Revenge, there was a guy who was like, I think he was a doctor's assistant, and he was like blood and I know that was like a thing that they just said in the 70s, but I feel like these movies are also critiques on Black people and Black culture to a degree. Abby and Jay's Revenge, a decent Halloween double feature. I don't think I would make it a tradition, but these were decent movies for the time, the budget, what they probably had available to them, the resources. These were decent movies. I don't know where I rank them as far as kind of like Blaxploitation horror movies, because technically, from what I remember, I've only seen like two or three, and that would be these two and then The Thing with Two Heads. And I don't even know if The Thing with Two Heads is a true horror movie. The conversations around sexuality, the church, mental health as well with Black people. That's something I didn't mention. There's a point that they make with in Abby and in JD's Revenge where people don't listen when people are going through stuff and people kind of are going through what might be considered a mental change, a stress change, or just a change in general. People didn't listen to decent movies. Like I said, I don't think I would make it a tradition. What movies did you watch for Halloween? Did you check out any Blaxploitation movies for Halloween? Any Blaxploitation horror movies? Any Black horror movies in general? Let me know. Hope you have a good one. Hope you're blessed.